Who are the most impactful villains in Dragon Ball? Now just off the top of your head, you may think this is a pretty obvious list, but I beg to differ. Now the most important word to define in all of this is impact, especially when it comes to Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is one of the most popular stories ever, so notoriety won't factor into how I rank these characters. There will be three aspects that I'll be considering: impact on the story, impact on other characters, and long-term influence. There have been multiple times where a villain has changed the narrative. There have also been multiple times where a villain's presence sets in motion a character's development. And then there have been a couple of times where a villain has changed the Dragon Ball world. Now before we get started, I have to mention that villains like the Cybermen or Cell Juniors won't be included. I think that the lowest level of villain that I'll truly consider is someone with the importance of Qui, and that's the bare minimum. So with that being said, let's do a top 10. I've determined that I have 27 villains to choose from. There are far more than 27 villains in Dragon Ball, but in my opinion, these 27 made enough of a contribution for a top 10 argument. At number 10 is Tien. Early Dragon Ball wasn't about saving the galaxy, but more so about martial arts and personal growth. Tien, introduced as the antagonist for the 27 World Martial Arts Tournament, encapsulated these themes. Tien was a formidable opponent to Goku, one due to his strength, but also because his brutal approach clashed with Goku's philosophy of self-improvement and kindness. Now Tien was a layered character. He wasn't necessarily driven to be evil or malicious, he was simply a product of his environment, and unlearning some of his toxic ideals is what makes Tien one of the most impactful villains in Dragon Ball. Tien's redemption was the first time Dragon Ball demonstrated that an antagonist could evolve into a hero. This idea became a cornerstone of the series' storytelling, influencing the arcs of characters like Piccolo, Android 17 and 18, and most notably, Vegeta. It's hard to say that this trend had to start with Tien, but you can't argue that he did lay the groundwork. At number 9 is Morrow. Now some of you might see this as a controversial take. Morrow isn't the most original Dragon Ball villain. He's an amalgamation of a bunch of different characters' abilities and characteristics that we've seen before, but the reason I have Morrow in my top 10 is because he was the first antagonist that was a true villain in a long time. Go through all of Super's antagonists. Beerus isn't a villain, Frieza is, but he's not new. Hit isn't a villain, Jiren isn't a villain. Now, Zamasu is a villain, but with him, he believes that he's doing what's right. Eliminating all mortals is his sixth sense of justice. But Morrow, there's none of that. He goes out destroying people and eating planets all because he wants to. It's nothing more to it. It reminds me of villains like the ones we saw in Dragon Ball Z. Now Morrow doesn't have any long-term influence, but he more than makes up for it with his story impact and how he impacted other characters like Goku and Vegeta. Up next is Nappa, and he's one of my all-time favorite villains. Nappa is one of the most impactful villains because he was the first character to visibly kill members of the main cast. And this really shifted the tone for what kind of series Dragon Ball Z would be going forward. The way he wiped out characters like Yamcha, Tien, Chaozu, and Piccolo in real time gave the Saiyan saga a sense of danger that had never been seen before. His reign of terror helped to emphasize that Z was operating on a much higher level of stakes. But beyond that, Nappa played a crucial role in defining what it meant to be a Saiyan at a time where the concept of a Saiyan was still being solidified. Nappa was completely merciless. He enjoyed killing, showed no remorse, and treated Earth's warriors as mere playthings. But on the other hand, Nappa's dynamic with Vegeta also told us a lot about how Saiyans operated. Despite being the larger, seemingly more brutish fighter, Nappa was unquestionably subordinate to Vegeta. This reinforced that Saiyans valued power above all else. Vegeta was stronger, so Nappa followed him without question. His presence and his contrast with Goku helped shape the audience's understanding of Saiyan nature and why Goku stood apart from his own people and how rare he was. At number 7 is Pilaf. Now I know many see him as a comedic and small-time character in comparison to everyone else who would be on this list, but his impact on the franchise is undeniable. Not only was he the first villain in Dragon Ball, but he was also the first villain to ever actively seek out the Dragon Balls, setting the template for almost every antagonist after him. Vegeta and Nappa came to Earth to wish for immortality. The entire Frieza saga revolved around collecting the Dragon Balls on Namek. Even Zamasu and Morrow, who came much later in the franchise, all tied back to the concept that Pilaf first established, using the Dragon Balls to wish for power. And then Pilaf was one of the few villains successful in collecting the Dragon Balls for such a long time. Demon King Piccolo did summon Shenron and then killed him. But Vegeta and Nappa never even got close. Frieza gathered the Namekian Dragon Balls but never made a wish himself. Cell and Majin Buu didn't even bother with the Dragon Balls, and it wasn't until Dragon Ball Super where Zamasu used the Super Dragon Ball successfully. Pilaf's long-term influence truly can't be overstated, yet it's not enough for me to put him over Majin Buu. Now listen, I don't think Majin Buu is written all that well, but he brought an insane amount of history and lore to the franchise. Unlike previous villains who had clear motivations, Buu is more of a force of nature, an entity that exists simply to destroy and consume. His origins are tied to an era long before the events of the series, introducing the concept of the Supreme Kais as overseers of the universe and revealing a forgotten battle between divine beings and a creature of pure destruction. Buu also doesn't follow a standard villain arc. Instead, he constantly shifts, mutating from childlike innocence to mindless destruction to pure animalistic evil. Each transformation is less about character development and more about embodying different aspects of disorder, whether it's the unpredictable nature of Fat Buu, the ruthless efficiency of Super Buu, or the raw destruction of Kid Buu. His existence goes against the usual structure of Dragon Ball Z's storytelling, so he's very unique in that sense. While he may not have the strongest narrative depth, his presence does help reshape our understanding of the Dragon Ball universe, making it clear that its threats aren't just tyrants, but also beings that exist beyond our sense of reason. Now at number 5, I have Vegeta. There's one thing I want to make clear. Vegeta is far more impactful as an anti-hero / good guy than as a villain. His presence in the Saiyan saga was legendary, and I think that before a certain someone, Vegeta was the perfect antagonist for Goku. Like Nappa, Vegeta's character was more evidence of who the Saiyans were as a race of people and how it was so different from Goku. So if you tried to say Vegeta helps Goku come to understand who he is as a Saiyan more, I'd agree, but he didn't do it as a villain. Vegeta during the Frieza saga, Cell saga, and Buu saga is far more impactful than he was in the beginning, and that's not a diss. Vegeta is probably the most consistently well-written character throughout Dragon Ball Z, and I don't think it's wrong to say that he was least impactful at the beginning. He's one of the most popular Dragon Ball characters of all time. He represented the culmination of everything the Z fighters have faced up to that point. He was literally created to be the perfect warrior. Cell's character ties deeply into the series' theme of evolution. He mirrored how Saiyans got stronger, but in a much more twisted way. One of the things I love about Cell is how he tries to hide that he's really evil. For much of his saga, he justified all of his actions by saying he was programmed to be perfect. And you know what? Let's give it to him. Cell was just doing what he was supposed to do. But when things didn't go his way, he did this. Yeah, that's evil. No two ways around it. Now I can point out how he impacted characters like Gohan, Vegeta, Trunks, and Goku, but I think the idea of Cell is in opposition to the Saiyans. Yes, Cell has Saiyan genetics and can increase in strength quickly like a Saiyan, but he goes about getting stronger in the most non-Saiyan way possible. So it was poetic to see a Saiyan take advantage of hard work and emotion to overcome the opposite. At number 3, we have Demon King Piccolo. And his placement in this top 3 is very simple for me. He is the blueprint for every real Dragon Ball villain that followed because he was the first antagonist to bring a truly dark tone to the series. His presence loomed over the arc long before his real fight with Goku, as his henchmen did his bidding, building him up as the ultimate threat. This storytelling technique where a villain is hyped up before their full debut became a major staple of later Dragon Ball sagas like Frieza, Cell, and even Majin Buu. They all benefited from this type of build-up, making them feel even more imposing when they finally took center stage. Demon King Piccolo checks all the boxes. He had crazy impact on the story, crazy impact on the characters, and long-term influence that can't even be questioned. So now we're down to 2. At number 2, I have Raditz. Raditz didn't lay a blueprint for other villains to follow, and he wasn't even the strongest villain in his saga, but Raditz's impact on the story is second to none. I could argue that the biggest plot point in Dragon Ball history is Goku learning that he is a Saiyan. It changes everything, and that fact being delivered through Goku's brother makes it even more impactful. Frieza is the most impactful villain in Dragon Ball history, and we're gonna go through all the reasons why. First is because he is the perfect opposition to Goku. He embodies everything Goku stands against. While Goku was a low-class Saiyan who values self-improvement, freedom, and compassion, Vegeta is a tyrant born into power, ruling through fear and oppression. Their battle isn't just a physical struggle, but a philosophical one as well. More than that, Frieza was the catalyst for the Super Saiyan transformation, one of the most iconic moments in anime history. That moment didn't just change Dragon Ball Z, it shaped the entire franchise. Super Saiyan became a defining element of Dragon Ball, influencing future transformations, arcs, and even later series like Dragon Ball Super. Without Frieza, Dragon Ball as we know it simply wouldn't exist. Also, no other villain in the series made the Z Fighters feel more hopeless than Frieza. For 90% of the Namek saga, nothing they did mattered. They strategized, they gathered Dragon Balls, they got stronger, but Frieza was always one step ahead. And he wasn't just stronger and they were playing catch up, Frieza would get stronger and then damn near kill somebody, like every time. Each victory for the Z Fighters was either temporary or insignificant, making him feel invincible in a way no villain before or after Frieza ever did. His impact on the characters was just as profound. Goku for the first time had to truly embrace his Saiyan heritage to overcome him. Vegeta, the proud warrior, completely broke down and wept, revealing the tragic history of the Saiyans under Frieza's rule. Gohan, who was always fearful, had to step up in ways he'd never had before. Frieza's mere presence exposed vulnerabilities in the Z Fighters that no other villain did, making his arc one of the most character-defining in the entire series. And when you think of a Dragon Ball villain, the first character that comes to mind is always Frieza. His design, personality, and influence are unmatched, cementing him as the villain of the franchise. But with that being said, like, subscribe, and comment if you agree or disagree. This is BigTune, and thanks for watching. Y'all have a good one.